Alright guys, I wanted to do a brief video on how Zoom works. I know some of you probably got a little bit of experience towards the end of last semester if your instructors use that as a mode for class meetings. But I don't want to assume everybody knows how to use Zoom and the unique features that it offers. So, usually this is what will pop up when you enter a meeting. You have the option to share your background or not. I prefer it if I can see your face because that gives me some connection with you. Let me do that. It gives me some type of visual of who I'm talking to. It makes it a little bit more personal. So, whenever you hover around the lower part of your Zoom screen, if you actually you have to download Zoom. So that's technically the first step. But once you enter your video, or the meeting, if you want to start your video, you press start video and ta-da. Okay, face, cool. If you don't like your background or if there's a lot of stuff happening behind you, if you're sharing an apartment with roommates and let's say they're doing a meeting behind you, right, you can always use a virtual background. And I'm going to insert a link right here, okay, that's provided by the Zoom website, and they give you a nice brief run through on how to use virtual backgrounds. So in order to use those virtual backgrounds, you can either go into choose virtual background or video settings. Okay. In video, you can look at your face. Make sure you have good lighting or relatively good lighting. Okay. And then you can choose your virtual background. The program provides these first three. I haven't always had the best of luck using virtual backgrounds. Like you can see, the library is now part of my face, which is kind of weird, okay? But the video kind of gives you a rundown of how to change the background that's detected. So by clicking on this little color box, you can say my background is actually this color, and then what the program does is it fills in everything that it thinks is that color. So I think this is usually why green screens are advised, but not everyone has a green screen, and that's not particularly like reasonable for me to expect of you guys to use. So if you want to use a virtual background, you just want the space relatively a blank color, and preferably don't wear the same color that or a color that matches your background. That way you don't blend in and become the virtual background yourself. Okay. If you don't like the ones that are provided for you, you can always add your own. I uploaded some Zoom backgrounds if you just Google search them. So now I'm in a Hogwarts common room. What? I'm also a Harry Potter fan. So my cat sneezed. Anyways, you can always upload your own if you want to get creative. Just nothing inappropriate, please. I think I'll probably resort to not using a virtual background, usually because I try to put myself in a quiet space where I have limited distractions other than cats, and don't have a whole lot going on. So keep that in mind for when you join meetings. I know it's not always an option for everybody, but try if you can. Okay. You can always click on participants. This will give you a list of the people in the meeting. It is just me. But when you click over your name, you should have the option to unmute. Usually I will have the power to mute or unmute you, but you also have a more option, which at times you're going to be popped in under your email name. So you always have the option to rename yourself your actual name. Please use the name that you prefer to be called on the participants list. That way I make sure I address you correctly. Last semester I had a student, I already knew him from a previous class, but he put himself as like Ron Weasley as a joke, and then I was like, Brandon, is this you? That was an anonymous name, by the way, just so I'm not disclosing any personal information. But you know, it makes it a little bit easier for me to recognize who you are if your name is listed in that participant list. Okay, so you have the option to rename yourself, and then you can also control or see if you're muted as well. Other options that I don't think I actually have on here, but when you're a participant and not a host, which I am labeled as one, so I have a little bit different options than you guys do. In that more box, you should be able to raise your hand. I believe that function could be somewhere else. Reactions you can add in. Breakout rooms, I don't think we'll be using these very much, so you don't really have to worry about that. This is an option that only I have because I'll be recording videos. But the main thing that you guys want to be able to use is this more box where you should be able to raise your hand, where I can address and lower your hands if you have a question that you want to ask, and I can unmute you during the meeting so you can speak freely. There's also a chat box that you can utilize. You can message certain people sometimes. I have the settings where you can chat with me only. Usually that'll be the setting if we're doing an exam Zoom. But usually in regular class settings, you'll be able to chat with everyone publicly. That way everyone can ask questions and everybody sees the questions being asked. So you can either ask questions by doing a raise hand function in that top participant bar, or you can ask questions in the chat. Either way, this is usually what my screen will look like, so I'll be able to keep track of both. And it's probably a good idea if you keep that chat box open so you can also see what questions are coming in. Okay, what else? Oh, there's also polling. So a lot of times, at least the new normal now, is we can't, well, I played with this last semester, and I would ask questions to the people who came into office hours or did Zoom meetings, and I'd be like, what do you guys think about this? And then nobody would say anything, and it was just crickets, and it was really weird. So there's this polling option that you can use now, and this is just an example. If I launch a poll, I can ask you guys questions, and I get fairly anonymous answers. So you can put in, like for this example, like what are your occupational goals? You choose your response, and then you press submit. If you don't press submit on the poll, your answer will not be recorded. Okay, so this is completely optional for you guys to participate in. Obviously, it's a good idea to participate if you can, just because it helps me keep track of how you're doing throughout the lecture period, and kind of gives me an idea if I need to bring up certain things or address any questions. Okay, so the polling function is a really nifty gadget. And then also, if we're ever in like office hours together, a lot of times students will ask questions about like, oh, I'm having this issue on a certain activity and I'm not able to figure this out. A lot of times I'll ask you to share your screen. So this little green button down here is the way that you do that. Usually I have it one participant can share at a time. Okay, so those are my personal settings, but if you click on share screen, you can share certain windows you have open, or you can share your desktop. Okay, and when you share any one thing, I I know you can switch between windows, but usually I just share my desktop. I feel like it's the easiest because anything that you navigate on your computer will automatically be shared with me. Just make sure, again, everything's appropriate. Okay, but this kind of concludes the Zoom basics. If you have questions, obviously in any class meetings or virtual office hours, email, feel free to ask, and if I don't know the answer to your question, I will try my best to look it up, but hopefully this is helpful for the new transition to online learning.